Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, and welcome once again to my guest, the chairman of the Oregon Republican Party, Bill Currier. Once again, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Laurel.
Let's talk about the future direction of the Oregon GOP. You were just elected to your third term as a GOP chairman earlier this year. Let's talk about how divided the party is, because there was a race between you and Sam Carpenter, who ran for governor in 2016, and he calls himself, he did last year, calls himself a forever Trumper. He thinks that the party should be more aligned with Donald Trump's policies. How divided is the party over how conservative it should be?
I don't think the party is divided in any significant sense. There's always a number of people in the party who aren't happy with leadership, and that percentage is relatively small. I believe that Mr. Carpenter's statements regarding Trump were sort of a litmus test that he was establishing to say, are you Trump enough? And the Oregon Republican Party and its members are not focused on that. We're focused on what are the policies that are going to impact Oregonians and how can we best achieve them?
What's your vision for the party?
My vision for the party is to continue to build an infrastructure that is effective on the ground. A lot of folks sort of take the party for granted. We're here, we have over 700,000 members, but what are they doing to help us advance that cause? And so I want to engage more people, and this close of session and the walkout and the horrible legislation that was stopped, thankfully, by the efforts of the senators, really brought a lot of people on board and said, wow, the party is standing up for us, even though in some cases we're not Republicans. They share our values. And so my goal is to harness that energy and direct it towards making changes in who holds office so that policies are reflecting the will and the needs of Oregonians.
What are your thoughts about a report in Politico that Trump aides are working to make pro-Trump factions control the state parties in 2020? And I heard you had some talks with them. Pro-Trump
factions. I would say that we have a president in the White House who is doing what he promised. And to that degree, we support the president, and we will continue to work with the president on policies that improve Oregon. We'll continue to have conversations. To me, this recall and the way the legislation ended was about Oregon, and it was about the governor's performance. And folks are looking to bring national issues down to the Oregon level, and the governor did that quite nicely when she started launching multi-million-dollar legal action against the federal government for simply enforcing existing law. So we need to stop doing that. We need to start focusing our energies on what is best for Oregon, and that's something that Oregon's Democrats and Republicans and non-affiliateds can agree on in most cases. What's really at stake here is, do we do it by force, or do we do it consistent with the will of the people?
What do you mean by force?
As happened with the emergency clauses, denying people the right to vote, and secondly, threatening to use executive orders when it's being used to bypass legislation. In other words, you're usurping the authority of the legislature and taking matters into your own hand. Administrators at high levels in government, governors, presidents, and so on, top of the executive branch, they are empowered with executive order, but not to go around legislation. And when it's used to threaten to go around legislation, that is shaking the very fundamental principles that our country was founded on.
I want to reflect back a little bit on the past election in 2018. Former GOP candidate for governor in 2016, Dr. Bud Pierce, expressed concern about the next election after the results for the GOP in the last election, when you lost seats and then the Democrats got a supermajority. Here's what he told OPB earlier this year. He said, "We were wiped out. We were just annihilated. I mean, you have Parrish, you have people in swing states, swing districts, Vial, Parrish, strong candidates, incumbents just pushed aside. Donald Trump is very unpopular to many Oregonians, and they came out to vote against him." He was talking about Rich Vial of Wilsonville, Julie Parrish of West Linn, among other GOP lawmakers who lost in November, and that's how the Democrats got a supermajority. He's concerned that the same thing is going to happen in the next election. Is there a risk to tie your candidates too much to Donald Trump?
Well, again, we should focus on what works and what's right in Oregon. Now, what's interesting about that is that that happened in 2018. In 2016, there wasn't that dynamic. So I understand where that sentiment and that statement is coming from, definitely. But it is not that typically happens when one party wins the White House. In the next election, there's that sort of pushback, and that's understandable. However, it's not likely to be repeated based on history, and we're going to focus on more on the Oregon issue.
Because you have 3 statewide races. We only have about a minute left, but 3 statewide races coming up in 2020. You have the Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasurer. Do you have some rising stars you're looking at to run for those offices?
We do.
Can you name a few for us in 30 seconds?
No. I think right now we're just going to continue building their support organically.
No names. You can't give us any names.
Don't want to do any names right now. I would love to, believe me. But I think right now what we're focused on is making sure that this session and the way it ended does not get repeated in the special session, and that we go back to reasonable governance.
You mean
with
the session in February coming up?
I'm talking about the legislative session that we just finished. We don't want to see a repeat of that in the special session.
Okay. Only 15 seconds, but just a final thought you'd like to leave with viewers before we go.
Well, you know, we've got to stop the bleeding. The recall effort is giving Oregonians a voice in several very large organic groups that have formed recently to express their concern and their disgust, quite frankly.
I have to stop you there, Bill. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
And thanks for watching Straight Talk. We'll see you next week.
All right.